A warm welcome to all of you here at the Balie. My name is Yuri Albrecht and I will be conducting this conversation with my guest Laurent Richard. I'm very pleased to introduce our guest of the evening, Laurent, founder of Forbidden Stories. You're an investigative journalist, documentary maker, and for his documentary series on Pegasus, he received an Emmy Award. For more than 25 years, Laurent has worked as an investigative journalist, and in 2017, he indeed founded Forbidden Stories. And as we will discuss in more detail tonight, Forbidden Stories continues, protects, and publishes the work of journalists who have been threatened, imprisoned, or murdered. It's crucial work in a world that is changing rapidly and where increasing number of countries are moving away from democracy towards autocracy. It's sort of an insurance policy for many investigative journalists around the world, has been very successful in that. And one of the cases we will discuss tonight is the murder of the Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina. Thank you for being here, Laurent. Very warm welcome.
Thank you for having me.
First go to this heartbreaking story, if we may, because it's a very good. You wrote about it in a recent article you wrote in The Guardian, opinion piece on investigative journalism, and she's called Victoria Roshina, I think, if I pronounce it rightly. My daughter is called Victoria, my sister is called Victoria, my mother is called Victoria. So I was very struck by it, and I thought we start out with this.
Yes, Victoria Roshina was a very brave journalist. What I mean by brave here is that she was the only Ukrainian journalist who dared to investigate from the occupied territory. And
she's Ukrainian and went into the occupied territories by the Russians. Yeah.
Basically, she was. We met with a lot of her editors, and many of them told us that it was not that easy to work with Victoria, because when she was having one idea, she was never going too far away from this idea. And she asked them many times, I want to go to the occupied territory and to do a story from there. And the answer of all the editors of Victoria were always the same. You will not go there, and we will never publish your story because that's going to be too dangerous. You might be kidnapped if you go over there. And 24 hours later, they were all receiving a call from Victoria say, I'm here, I'm calling you from the occupied territory. And
so she went across the line, across front line?
Yeah, she always managed to get inside the occupied territory through different ways. And she called the editors, and then they say, yeah, but we told you we will not publish your story because that's against our safety rules, and we don't want to encourage any reporters to risk their life for that.
Really? So they have a policy not to endanger their...
Yeah, she was the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yeah, but that's about our people. That's the story of our people, and we need to tell the story of our people living under occupation by the Russians. And by the way, many of those people have been kidnapped, and we don't have any news from them. And
many of those Ukrainian citizens were kidnapped by the Russians, and nobody knew where they went.
Yeah, we talk here about between 16,000 and 20,000 of civilians living in the occupied territories who disappear. And so Victoria wanted to investigate.
Around 20,000 people disappeared?
Yeah.
No,
and she wanted to investigate what happened to them. And she knew it was very risky. She had been already arrested by the FSB, the Russian secret intelligence. She had been captive for 10 days over there. They were filming her, forcing her to admit some fake charges. And 1 year after that, she decided to come back. So she went back to occupied territory. She went into some cities to report on the disappearance of thousands of civilians, and at some point she got arrested herself. And she was then arrested, and then we were not having any more traces of life of Victoria for months. And so she was one of those people, those ghosts to disappear. And at some point, months later, her father, the father of Victoria, received a call on his phone. It was maybe more than 15 months after the disappearance of Victoria. And
he received a call with her number,
with another number, with a Russian number, And she said, "Daddy, it's me. I will be released in a few weeks from now. Be ready to have me at home." And the conversation lasts for 3 minutes. And that was very unusual for a prisoner in a Russian prison to be able to call outside.
Yeah.
But there were, at that time, a lot of negotiation at the very high level to obtain the
This was
release
sort of 1.5 years after the full-scale war of Russia against,
absolutely, exactly,
against Ukraine.
Exactly. And so the conversation lasts for 3 minutes. The father was expecting his daughter to come back. And a few weeks later, he received an email from the Russian Federation announcing that Victoria Roshina, his daughter, was dead. And then this is where, with Forbidden Stories, we decide to pursue the work of Victoria Roshina. Not only to investigate what happened to her, but to investigate what happened to the thousands of civilians. And the goal of this project was to map and to investigate those black sites of detention all over Russia.
Why do you call them black sites?
Because some of them were secret. Some of them, including one, was not secret, was called the prison of Taganrog.
Taganrog, that's a smallish town at the Black Sea, at the Sea of Azov.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just over the border of Ukraine, the former border of
Yes.
Ukraine and Russia. Yeah.
And Taganrog was, after what we were able to see and to document with the help of, so for this project, the Victoria project, we started this project with that goals. What happened to Victoria? What happened to the others? Who are behind the killings? Who are behind this arbitrary detention system? Where those people are? How we can document and map those detention centers? And for that, we need a team, because it's impossible to operate as a journalist freely, of course, in Russia, especially for that kind of investigation. So we decided to team up with the Washington Post, with the Guardian, with Le Monde and many others.
And we is Forbidden Stories.
We is
And so you
Forbidden
took on
Stories,
that story, and you and others of how you went to
Ukraine first. So what happened is that
you first went to Ukraine to
meet with people who used to work with Victoria,
All right.
who know them.
Okay.
We wanted, and this is what we try to do at the beginning of every project, to understand the life of the journalist, to understand what happened, who is threatening the journalist, what kind of threats he or she receive, what kind of story she or he published before. So what we did was to first scrap on a computer all the stories that Victoria was working, to investigate as well the reason she was kidnapped. Then we understood, by discussing with some editors, that she wanted to name the people behind the detentions of civilians in Ukraine. And
the Russian officials or military or behind it.
From special services to some penitentiary services as well. And she already did publish some of those stories by naming some individuals. She had been already arrested by the FSB 1 year prior to that. So she was a very well-known journalist from the Russian Federation, from the Russian authorities. So what we did was to go immediately there. Edouard Perrin, our editor, went to Kiev and met with the editors of Victoria. We discussed with other reporters who did investigate as well the disappearance of civilians. We discussed with many newsrooms and asked them, do you want to join forces for this project?
Yeah, she was a freelancer, normally. She published at several media outlets.
And so we went to those different newsrooms. We explained what happened. Victoria disappeared. We don't know too much about her death. We don't know exactly what happened to her. We know what she wanted to investigate. We think there is a pattern behind, and we think there is a big investigation to run. But it's going to be very dangerous, so we need to do that all together. And that's the principle of Forbidden Stories. If one journalist is killed, 50 rise. The goal is to, one, make sure people will get access to the story. It's not we're not directly defending press freedom. We're not an advocacy group. What we are is just we are just journalists doing journalism, delivering facts, and making sure that people will be aware of what happened to those people living under occupation, for instance, in the case of Victoria.
So you formed a team with international media outlets, media companies, and local ones.
And local, of course, always.
And then you actually have to travel to the Washington Post how is it difficult to get these bigger ones on board in a joint investigative?
It depends. Sometimes it could be difficult because the thing here is that what we are doing with Forbidden Stories and the others are doing, like OCCRP and others, is called collaborative journalism. Mm-hmm. That means, for those who are not aware, that it's people, newsroom working together for the same project.
Yeah. Which is not so usual.
Which is not usual at all, which is not the mainstream model at all. When you are a young journalist and you go to a school of journalism in Amsterdam or in Paris, most of the time you will be trained to become a lone wolf reporter.
Yeah.
You will be trained
and score
to be,
yourself.
Yeah, and to be very competitive. And to work alone with your story, with your sources, with your editor, and with your scoop, and with your award on stage. What we are doing at Forbidden Stories is exactly the opposite. Mm-hmm. We are trying to break that rule. Not only for the romanticism behind, because it might sound romanticism to work together. It's not that romantic, honestly, because it requires a lot of leadership, a lot of organization. You need to be very detail-oriented if you want to have 40, 50 people working together. You need to set up some workflow, some milestone where you see you will be in 2 weeks from now in your collaborative investigation.
And a lot of it is on computer. It's very boring. It's very not very glamorous.
Yes.
On the first.
Well, sometimes, most of the time, we go on the field, and that's. I'm a television reporter. I work for 25 years, and I'm still producing documentaries. And I really believe mostly in the thing that we call meeting with human beings. Yeah. This is what I prefer in my work: meeting with human beings, listening from them, learning from them, and telling their stories. And then
But in this case, you could not go.
Yes.
Actually, to the places where you were investigating.
Yes, but we can find. We had to find all the way, and that's the beauty of collaborative journalism as well. When you can't access to some area like Gaza. We did the Gaza project.
Yes, you did.
It was not possible to go in Gaza, so we team up as well with The Guardian, with others, to investigate the killing of journalists over there using satellite imagery.
And so how did you go about with this Russian investigation?
So,
because you're saying it was I suspected there was a pattern of the disappearances.
Yes. So what we did that first, okay, let's create a team. So we went to Ukrainska Pravda, one of the outlets that Victoria was working for. Yeah. We went to the Washington Post and precisely the visual investigation team within, because one of the goals was
the visual investigation team.
Yeah, VI team. Mm-hmm. The VI team is something that is extremely efficient. When you have the VI team with you, it's good because especially
those are the guys you need to have.
Yeah, you need to have always a VI team with you because what we're talking here is about something that is under the radar. People are disappearing. And our work as a journalist is to make visible the invisible. And the VI team is made for that. They are helping you to visualize and helping the reader to see what others don't want you to see. Yeah. Basically, the prison of Taganrog, the nickname of that prison is the Russian Guantanamo. Mm-hmm. So one of the goals of the project was to offer to the reader a map and a vision and to reconstruct in 3 dimensions the prison itself where Victoria was held for months.
Because you found out which prison she was in.
Yes, absolutely. And how we found that was we were able to find that because of the collection of more than 50 testimonies from former prisoners of war, other people, other civilians who have been released but were the neighbors or were sharing the same cell than Victoria. Uh-huh. And were able to talk to our group of journalists, say, yes, I met Victoria for 2 days or for 3 weeks, and she was the one shouting out on the guards. She was so brave, even in that period of time, which was very difficult. So The goal was visualizing the prison so people can understand when they read the Washington Post, when they watch the YouTube video we produce or the documentary, they can realize the hell on earth and where and what is happening and the pattern behind. Providing testimonies as well. And one thing important to mention that after the publication of the Victoria Project, the people behind that system have been sanctioned from the European Union. So I don't know how much that is impacting their life, but that means that they will not be able to travel anymore to European Union or to have any kind of assets for that. So that's some kind of impact. And yes, and we managed to get some messages that Victoria was able to send just before her arrest. We managed to understand what happened exactly to her. We suspect that a drone was used to follow her, to track her in some streets, and she got arrested, and then from then she was deported to what we call a garage. It's basically an improvised station of torture, and the Russians are doing that in the occupied territory. As soon as they kidnap someone, they are placing in some places that might be a garage before, and they will torture the person heavily for the first 2 or 3 days. That's the most important phase of the detention for them, because they want almost to kill any wish from the human being to react anymore to that. And then the people have been deported in 2 or 3 different sites, like Victoria. She went to 2 or 3 different prisons until she died. So that was the goal of the project.
Do you know that she was treated in the same way? Was she tortured there? Do you have any evidence of that?
Yeah, so one thing we know that because the body of Victoria, after months of waiting, was returned to Ukraine. There are some exchange of prisoners, and Victoria was supposed to be released at some point. And this is how she was able to call her father. And finally, she has never been released. But still, months after the date of the time of her death, her body was returned to Ukraine in a plastic bag. And that plastic bag officially belonged to a male. That was
Written on it.
Yeah, written on the bag. But actually, it was the body of Victoria through the DNA analysis and so on. The thing that the Ukrainian authorities discovered that some organs were missing in the body. The eyeball and the larynx and the brain as well. And so they were able to run some analysis, and I'm sorry for the details, but
asking for it.
But the details were showing that because of that larynx that was missing, they were suspecting that they tried to strangulate Victoria, and there were as well some broken bones behind the head was broken, and so they suspect that this is how she died, because they perform strangulation on her. The fact that the brain was missing was a way that some experts interpret as a signal they want to send to other journalists. You will not be able to write or to produce or to think anymore. We took your brain out. So those details are very shocking, but I think that was made on purpose by the Russian authorities, of course. And so this is how we investigate, and there are still some missing part of what happened to Victoria and others.
But what you proved with the investigation and with a whole team of almost 50 is that there is a pattern of imprisoning Ukrainians in occupied territories, and what sort of process they go through and where they end up, and that's for around 20,000 prisoners before Victoria as well.
Yeah, that's a pattern, because the Russians need that to obtain, in exchange of those civilians, because some of them have been released in exchange of Russian prisoners of war. So this is why the Russians are doing their own market by kidnapping and getting some people from the occupied territory. It's also a way to terrorize people. And the brutality of the torture as well is we were able to collect many testimonies explaining how they were beaten, the way they were beaten, the use of dogs a lot, how they were exposed to some temperature, very cold as well. How they were, always, of course, blind in the transition or when they were moved to another place. So it's there were a kind of science of the detention, of the torture over there, and Victoria precisely wanted to reveal that,
to expose that, to reveal it,
yes,
to prove it,
yes,
yeah, and thank you for this precise story, and it's a very good illustration of what you as an organization and you as a journalist are trying to do. In this case, it's partly what your work is, I understand it well, is discouraging criminal organizations to kill a journalist which is onto them. So sort of a life insurance. But in this case, would you think that here it's not a criminal organization, it's no corruption, it's a state organization, which is a different kind of investigation, of course, and a different kind of impact. Would you think that in some way the Russian authorities would be frightened into being exposed?
I don't think so. And even if they are not, we still should do that, because it's not only to dissuade the Russian to kill journalists. It's a way to react and to make sure that the story will be published. Mm-hmm. It's a way to make sure that those information matter. If someone died for one story, that means that the story matter. And when you look at for what kind of stories journalists have been killed, it's always very important stories for all of us. Environmental crimes, corruption, money laundering, human rights violation. So we need to know. And if that process of pursuing the work of others who have been silent can act as a deterrent, then that's great. Mm-hmm. That's great. Mm-hmm. But I'm not naive. I didn't start Forbidden Stories because I wanted to stop all the killings of journalists. I still wanted to create an organization who can act as a deterrent, who can change the game, change at least the perception of some killers, some enemies of the free press, who might think twice, I will not target these journalists because I know that there is a consortium behind. And if I try to silence that story in Mexico, this story will be on the front page in Paris, in Amsterdam, in many other places. And I don't want those publications to create some damages on my own business, because they will expose my lawyers, my offshore company, my mining businesses, and so on. So I believe that the people who are attacking journalists, they don't care too much about the statement of NGO. It's important to run some NGO campaign. It's important
like Amnesty International. Or,
their work is crucial. We can't do without them. That's for sure. I just believe that we need all the tools to play and to act as a deterrent and to do our work as a journalist and to dissuade the people. We asked recently for the World Press Freedom Day, we went to more than 200 journalists and we asked them, in your mind, what is the best way to react when you are receiving a threat? And we asked that to people highly under threat.
All over the world, journalists all over the world.
53 countries, 204 journalists. 40% of them have been already physically abducted, attacked. So high-level threatened journalists. 68% of them are saying one thing. The most important and efficient way to react when you're under threat is a collaborative answer, is to team up with others. Our
especially in other countries, especially across borders.
Especially cross borders, and they say the people who are attacking us are scary about only one thing, journalism. They are scary about having their own crimes exposed. But they are not scared, they are not afraid about one. They will be afraid about 50. So this is exactly the DNA of Forbidden Stories. Like we are here to pursue the work in a collaborative way, not because it's about the question of the safety of our profession. It's about the safety of democracy. There is no democracy if you don't have information. There is no information if you don't have a journalist. And the people who are attacking journalists, they are not acting alone. Disinformation is organized, repression is organized, cyber surveillance is organized. So why journalists should they remain isolated? We should team up.
Disinformation, international corruption, you're saying. Because a lot of your investigative work, and not the one of Victoria Roshina, but other work you took up, has to do with corruption and private companies or drug cartels, you're saying it's all connected, and you just said in one small sentence, these things are important to all of us. You think that I would think that you get a rather grim picture of the international corrupt society. You know, we see a little bit sometimes of it by oligarchs popping up and being able to. Would you say that the sort of the rising tide of oligarchy in the world, is that the same problem as corruption and crime connected to it?
Depends of what we call corruption, because I think, of course, if you look at the most corrupted places or the most corrupted industries, this is exactly the same country where you will find a lot of journalists who have been killed or threatened. So there is a correlation between corruption and violence against press freedom, and so access to information. That is very...
because you would be very well posed to have a global view on this, because you're investigating it worldwide.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the thing is, what is very different, I would say, from 10 years ago, is the normalization of the killing of the journalist. That is something very new.
Really?
What we are observing, and especially since Gaza, that is, it became kind of normal to admit that journalists, it's part of the game, it's part of their job to be killed at some point or to be threatened at some point.
It's a legitimate target.
Yeah, it became part of the conversation of the new normal, is that, journalism is a very dangerous profession. It should not be. It should not be. And this is not starting, but it's when I became a journalist, when I wanted to become a journalist 25 years ago, the people all around me, my family, my friends told me, oh, that's cool to be a journalist. You will travel the world, and I did travel around the world. You will meet very interesting people, and I met a lot of interesting people. You will see history, and that's great, and I did part of that. But now, if you say that you are a journalist in a dinner, in any place in the world, you will have the same reputation as a taxi driver in Paris.
Which is a bad one.
Which is bad. Which is bad. And people will say, oh, you're part of the main media, or you are part of the corrupted elite, or you... So what changed in that gap of time, in those past 25 years? I think there is different things. First, there is the many populists using that kind of narrative that journalists are the enemies of the people. And we can see that from the west to the east, from Trump to Putin, on the same page, together. Journalists are the enemies of the people. Trump said that many times. The White House decided to publish even a list. When you start as an authority to publish some list of journalists that are doing fake news, according to you, it's becoming dangerous and very dangerous for them to be listed as potential targets. So there is a huge responsibility from our political governance to, in many parts of their life, to name the messenger as the problem of the cause of the problem. Then, of course, there is our own responsibility into that about the perception people they do have about journalists. And it's true that when people get confused about what is the difference between an opinion and an information, and if it's true that if you are only delivering your opinion, age 24, on social network, on television, on live show, like commenting all the news, whatever your expertise is. Maybe you're not expert on that and you will talk about that. So people will start thinking about, okay, journalism is not about reporting, it's about just saying what you think. And that is not what journalism is. Journalism is about holding the powerful accountable. The rest is communication. The rest is communication. And so we have our own responsibility because we need to entertain some algorithm that we don't know how they work, by the way, to be present and to attract more followers. So of course it's more complex than that. But and in many history of many countries, we have seen that when democracy is under attack, one of the very first targets are always the journalists. Look at Maria Ressa facing Duterte, for instance, or other
in the Philippines.
The Philippines, or other case like her. And so I would say yes, that more than ever we need to re-explain the basics about what journalism is for, who we are working
and
for.
Why it's also important for us, and it's not about faraway places. Huh?
Yeah, and this is why I say what we are doing at Forbidden Stories is not for the safety of journalists, it's for the safety of all of us, for
society.
Of society, because we need to access information if we want to understand who we are, to understand our community, to be able to vote with the right information.
But do you see a connection to our safety and our freedom, just from the egoistic point of view for a citizen here, and international corruption overseas and very far off places?
Yes.
How does that connect?
I can explain that very easily. For instance, if you maybe in 2 weeks from now you will wake up and listen to a radio show telling you that one more Mexican journalist have been killed, and
or in the Brazilian rainforest,
or in the Brazilian forest, and you will think, okay, that's Mexico. It's dangerous for journalists. I know that, and you won't be surprised, sadly. The thing that Mexican journalist was maybe killed by a politician who was in connection with a drug cartel that is selling cocaine in 56 countries in the world, including in the Netherlands. So there is a direct connection. Jagendra Singh, who was a journalist in India, was killed because he was investigating people who were illegally mining the sand from a beach, and that sand was then sold to Europe and to the US. Carlos Schock was investigating the pollution of a lake in Guatemala caused by a mine who is selling nickel all over the world. So it's global.
All three were killed, and you named their names.
No, Carlos was arrested, Jagendra was killed, and and the other was killed. But so we need to understand that it's not only a local issue, and it's not only a crime against press freedom. It's not only a crime against access to information. It's a crime against our knowledge, our ability to know, and it's connected. And one thing to prove it is when we investigate, for instance, the mining corporation. They might be not the ones who are ordering the killings, of course, or they will order the killings and use Sicario or hitmen to do the work.
Sicario or a paid murderer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but they are very global. Most of the time they are multinational, based in the north, in the US, in Canada, in Europe.
Based in what way?
In the US.
Based in what way?
Headquartered. Yes, the headquarters are based in
from the cartel organizations, the drug organizations.
No, well, most of the mining corporations are based in Europe.
Oh, you mean the mining companies?
Yes, yes.
And they are mining companies are specifically dangerous and corrupt.
Very dangerous and very corrupted. Very corrupted, because they are some of the most corrupted. This is one of the most corrupted industries, and for years. They are operating in some countries where there is a lot of stories of bribery and of local authorities, and this is how journalists who try to investigate human rights violation over there, workers' condition, pollution caused by a gold mine, for instance. We did that work in Tanzania, for instance, where a giant gold mine called Barrick Gold, which is headquartered in Canada, with the #1 in the world, was mining over there, and there was a lot of allegation of human rights violation. Not only allegation, but we prove it. And journalists who tried to report on that were harassed, and so the story was entirely forbidden. So it's important to know that the gold that we do use in our funds every day, the sand that is used to build that building, for instance, or the drug you will buy here in Amsterdam, for instance, there is some blood on that product, and maybe some blood of a journalist who tried to reveal, just for us, just for our knowledge, for our access to information, for our right to be informed, who died for it.
You, in general, investigate the stories of people who are killed. Did you ever meet one of the journalists before actually they were killed, and after that, and took up the investigation?
Yes. Yeah. So one day we received a call from Rafael Moreno, a journalist in Colombia, who was living north of Colombia in the state of Montelibano, and he called us on a Wednesday, reaching out to our team, say, "I'm Rafael Moreno. I'm based in Colombia. I'm used to be threatened, but this time I'm very scary because I'm surrounded by bad guys." And so he was threatened by the clan of Golfo, which is a very powerful drug cartel operating not only in Colombia but in Mexico as well, in other countries. And he was he was under threat and very concerned. So our team spoke with him on the Wednesday, on the Thursday, and on Sunday we learned about the killing of Rafael. And on the Monday we took a plane, and on the Tuesday we were with his fiancée, and I've been there, and we managed to go to the flat immediately of Rafael, to where he used to work, where he was having a lot of papers, because his fiancée told us, go and rush to this flat because there are many documents, many of those stories he was working. You should have that to pursue his work. And so we pursued the work of Rafael that way. And 6 months later, we published the Rafael Project. We did work with other Colombian news organizations who were amazing, plus many international outlets. So we published the Rafael Project. I can give you another example of situation, and that's part of almost the daily life of forbidden storage, which is intense as a life. One day I received a message from Sevinch, who is the editor of Absas Media in Azerbaijan. And a few hours before that message I received, the director of this news organization got arrested. And Sevinch, when she learned about the arrest of her director... In
Baku, in Azerbaijan.
Yeah, Baku, in Azerbaijan.
Yeah.
Sevinch was, when she learned about that, she was in Turkey. She was not in Azerbaijan. And her decision immediately was to go to Azerbaijan to support her director.
Her chief editor, yeah.
And she knew that immediately she will be arrested. She will be the next. And from the airport, she sent me a message, and we discussed a little bit. And then she went on the plane, and as soon as she landed in Baku, she got arrested. So what we did was after that, to discuss with other journalists from Absas Media who were in exile, to discuss with the lawyers of Sevinch, and to check, to make sure that they were okay with the fact that we will pursue their work, because they were in jail. They are still in jail now.
They're still in jail.
They are still in jail, and so we did. So they answer through the lawyers, yes, we want you, Forbidden Stories, and your partners to pursue our work. That's so crucial, because it's about corruption, and it's not only about corruption in Azerbaijan, it's about corruption from Azerbaijan and other countries in Europe. And so this is why we did this Baku project, pursuing the work of Absas Media. And they are still in jail. So what I want to say as well, because you were explaining that it's a life insurance for journalists, it's not. What is it? It's a life insurance for information. No one can pretend that you're going to save the life of a journalist. And we are not safety experts. We are journalists. But we believe that if we ensure the survival of the story, ensure the survival of the information, then we will protect maybe the life of the journalist, because journalists got killed because of the story. So we are here to ensure the survival of the story, and in a collaborative way, so we can amplify the story that others wanted to silence.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you're based in Paris, and you're saying it's an intense life because things change rapidly, and you fly over and you investigate, and you're just said, I'm in the business of meeting people face to face, going there, working with people, investigating it. Doesn't it affect you? Because I know you for several years now.
Yeah, sometimes
you're still sort of happy-go-lucky reporter. If I look at you, but wouldn't after all those years wouldn't it sort of grow on you and turn very grim?
No, so I would be lying if I would say no, it's fine, everything is fine, and I think that kind of answer could be a bit strange. Of course, it's a lot of stress to manage and to deal with. It's a lot of fear sometimes. It's a lot of
in what way?
For the people who are working with us. Mm-hmm. The nightmare would be to have someone from our team being killed, being kidnapped. Sometimes we had to postpone for 2 years one story because of the safety. The safety of one of our sources was not guaranteed. And we wanted the source to be in another country, to be in a safe place so we can publish a story. And we did.
Because you not only think about reporters, you think about the sources as well.
Very important. Mm-hmm. That sometimes journalists always tend to speak only about their own safety. Very important to speak about the safety of our sources. There is no journalism without people who trust journalists and who will risk their life to give us a document.
Yeah.
And so that's very important. And this is our responsibility to make sure that they won't have any issue. So yes, it's some stress. We are surrounded by the death. We are pursuing the work of others who have been killed. When you are doing that, you have on your shoulders some weight that you cannot estimate at the beginning. In the meantime, you are, and this is what I really feel, you are, because of the collaborative and collective nature of the work, you can feel the strength of the collective energy. And I believe that in that kind of fight, because this is a fight, even if we're not activists, or if we're doing activism, it's activism for access to information, I would say. You can feel that collective effort will provide you some energy that is exceptional. I never feel so happy in my life, honestly, to be very honest with you, since I did create Forbidden Stories. Mm-hmm. Even if sometimes, yes, we are facing and we are in the middle of the night in some conference call, taking some very difficult decision. But we as well, we have the feeling that what we are doing is something that is important, is something that matters. And it's not only something, that's a signal. And if we can inspire others as well to do the same, to replicate the model of Forbidden Stories, it's open source, it's free, everybody can use it.
Can join in.
Yes, and join in. I think it's great. And so yeah, in investigative journalism, the activity, the nature itself is hard. It's very hard. But I believe, especially now in this age of where the big tech companies are flooding our information ecosystem, where fake news are spreading 6 times faster than facts, I really believe that there is a strong future for journalism. There is no algorithm who will hold the powerful accountable. There is no algorithm who will protect the source. There is no algorithm who will knock on the door of a minister and demand answer. So only human being, journalists can do and will do that. And I believe that in that period of confusion where we are lost between opinion and facts, that people will go to journalists, because journalists are basically the last human beings on the planet whose job is to verify facts before publishing facts.
Now, you've been a French journalist for all your career.
And I'm still.
And you're still based in Paris, but you've been a domestic journalist in that respect, that you followed the French politicians and followed them critically and interviewed them, among others, the French president, who was not too fond of your critical questions. And don't you miss investigating into your own country? Because supposedly there's corruption, there's things going on.
We are still investigating our own country, because those story of mining corporation, it always go through multiple countries, including France, or we might
including Amsterdam,
as well,
where we're here now.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything is global. So if we have some part of the story that is happening in France, we are very happy with that, because that's our place. We know how to handle that and to investigate those people. But still, yes, I might miss sometimes reporting myself. I'm still producing documentaries. I try still always to have some personal investigative project aside. That's very important, I think, like not to forget the nature of the mission.
Because also the state of French journalism is sort of worrying, you could say.
What do you mean by boring?
No, not boring, worrying.
Worrying. Okay, sorry.
There's reason to be worried about the French press in a way. Not only because there will be elections in 1 year time, and we don't know who will be the next president. Of course, we never know. But in this case, as we understand here in Holland, there's this Bolloré family who owns a third. Half of French media outlets.
And this is very, very concerning. What is happening in the French media ecosystem is very concerning. And so for those who are listening to the podcast who are not familiar, so Bolloré is a billionaire, a French billionaire, making businesses all around the world, especially in Africa, in many kind of businesses, and is the owner of many newspapers, televisions in France. And
publishing houses,
And there is the very first problem is that we have a high level of concentration of billionaire behind newspapers in France. Like we used to say, like between 8 and 10 same guys, millionaire or billionaire, are the owners of almost 95% of the news ecosystem in France.
Eight people in France.
Yes, yes. So that is not good at all. That is not good at all, especially when those people are buying titles not to help them, but just to get some power through this kind of ownership. And this is what is happening with Vincent Bolloré.
To get power.
To get power, but not any kind of power. The thing is that is here to promote the far-right group and ideology, racism, and many of the news title that is helping and that is the owner are exactly supporting the far-right party and all those ideas that is about hating the others, extremism, anti-Semitism.
Supporting the party to the right of the Front National. Huh?
To the far right.
Even more right-wing than the Front National.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and the audience, the reach, the ratings of the show, like there is one CNews that is one of the name of the channel that is supporting, is having a large audience. Many people are watching that because it's kind of well produced and there is a lot of conspiracy behind that, and so they are attracting people and more people over the months, and it's exactly happening at the same time, and so there is a correlation, of course, behind, where all the survey and the polls are saying that whatever it's happening in France, the next president will come from the far right. So, but many things might happen until the election day, which will be in May 27. This is extremely concerning.
Your namesake, Laurent Binet, who was here 14 days ago, walked out of the publishing house he's been with all his life. He's one of the most successful French novelists.
Yeah.
And he walked out with 250 other authors of one of the publishing houses, which had just been bought by Bolloré family. Would you think there's anything you could do against this oligarchization or concentration of media outlets?
Regulation. Regulation. I think regulation to run against monopolization. And I think like making sure that we can't, no one can be the owner of more than 20 news organizations. That's an idea that will make sense, I think, for most of us in terms of an healthy ecosystem we want to live in. So having some limitation of that kind, having some authorities who will really react efficiently if someone is expressing some racist idea on air, on TV. So if you are only finding them for, okay, you will have to pay 1 million for that, but they have 400 billion, so they can pay anything you want. So it's not enough. So we need more regulation, and it's really about that. But for this, you need to have a strong wish from the political party to play that role.
Maybe to close off, you once told me that you were sitting in your office you rented as a freelance journalist in your own office in Paris, and after a few minutes you heard shooting from next door. That happened to be the editorial rooms of Charlie Hebdo. You walked in as the first person to walk in after the murderer, and you found people dying and dead. That was one of the reasons you started.
Yeah, I was not a freelancer. I used to work for that company, Première Ligne, where we used to produce investigative documentaries from that company. I was not there at the time of the attack. I arrived 1 minute and a half after the terrorists escaped the building.
Yeah, but you were the first to walk in.
So basically I was in the street and I was the first to enter the building and to see the consequences of the terrorist attack. So the people who got killed, who were doing the same job as me, who were cartoonists, and with other colleagues, we did everything we can to identify the people who were still alive, to help them, and we stayed some kind of long time within that newsroom, waiting first for the medical team to arrive, and then helping them to. With Edouard Perrin, we were helping doctors to bring one of the victims to the street, and we were on the second floor, and so that was a very. My colleague from Première Ligne, from my team, were there during the attack, so they had to go on the rooftop, and they were thinking maybe they're going to be the next one to be targeted, to be killed. And so I was lucky to arrive just after. I was still traumatized about what I've seen when we were opening the door of Charlie and see people who were died, and trying to identify who was still alive.
There were some people still alive.
Yeah, there were some people still alive, and but what really struck me is that it was a newsroom, and I know newsroom for I spent all my life in some newsroom, but that newsroom was silent. The silence of the newsroom was something very special. Usually, a newsroom is never something where you will have some silence, and there were silence everywhere. And so I will never forget the silence of this room, of this newsroom. That's something very, very special.
And asking you is at the end of the conversation, because you formulated, partly because what you saw in that silent newsroom, an answer to the violence against journalists. But as we were just discussing, there's another silent takeover by billionaires who silence our profession, our journalism. And that might be the friends of Putin, or the friends of Orban, or the friends of the far right in France, or the friends of Trump. But there's another silencing of journalism going on. So you might have formulated an answer 9 years ago by founding Forbidden Stories. Are you worried that these conglomerates of rich friends of dictators and the likes are able to silence journalism?
Yeah, they are able to silence. They do silence journalism. They do. They even in the not far from here in the UK, you have lawyers who will ask you millions just to defend yourself, even if you never publish anything. I was 2 days ago in Switzerland, where friends of us, colleagues of us, they can't name a bank. Even if they did ask the question, they did everything they have to do to investigate them. There is still allegation of corruption, and they can't name the bank in their stories. It's forbidden to name the bank. Because the banks went to the courts to forbid them to mention their name. Yeah, and because by the law you can't do that in Switzerland, and in the UK it's very very dangerous to be a journalist as well, because you will have to face sometimes lawyers who will sue you for years, and that's a way to kill your story, to kill your work, to kill journalism, because the strategy is for them to keep you on that track of in the courtroom, and to make sure that you won't be in the newsroom, that you won't be working on your work, that you won't be publishing some stories, that you will spend all of your time working on your defense. And so that's a strategy. And the enemies of the free press, they are not in that case in Mexico. They are here, maybe 200 meters from the Balie Center or in my street in Paris. They are lawyers. So this is why it's a collective responsibility as well. When we talk about press freedom, it's not a theory. It's not far away. It's about your lawyers next door, your journalists next door, your source next door. That is very important to go back again to the protection of the source. In some cases, even in France, journalists were spied on, were surveilled because they were revealing some documents related to the defense industry and some contracts that France was selling some weapons to some bad countries or bad regime, I would say. And so they got surveilled because of that story, because the French authorities wanted to know who is that source. We want to punish that source, so we will spy on the journalist. And they did so. And so that's so it's a huge responsibility, and it's not a theory far away. And what is at stake, again, we're not talking here about only the safety of the journalist. It's about the safety of all of us, our ability to access to information.
Thank you, Laurent Richard, for this conversation on forbidden stories and on press, free press, freedom of press, and journalism in worldwide situations. Thank you very much for coming and for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you.
Like always, there might be questions from the audience, and if there are, you're very welcome to state them. I don't know whether Laurent has all the answers, but
maybe
there
maybe
might be,
not.
there might not be. Don't feel obliged, but
Laurent, can I
Sure.
Thanks a lot for everything you tell. I have loud voice. I was wondering, have you been active in China? And how is it? Because that's already a place where it's very difficult to get in. Well, there are quite some issues with journalism, I understand.
Yeah, not that much, honestly, because of safety reasons. Because we are in touch with some journalists who who are living in exile, but they do have some families in the country. So it's very difficult to work with them because the Chinese government is actively surveilling the population, dissidents or journalists in exile, with a lot of technologies involved. And so this is clearly, there are some of those countries, even if those other newsrooms were able to investigate Uyghur camp, for instance, or but this is clearly one part of the world that is extremely difficult to investigate because of the level of retaliation they are able to do against any people who will dare to speak out.
You said before that sometimes you're scared or you're afraid or you have to consider other people's safety. Has there ever been a case where you've said, okay, what am I doing? Maybe it's time to reconsider this?
Yes, of course. No, yes, of course. We sometimes you have to take a decision about should I cross this street at this hour or not. The question is that precise, and of course you as a European you don't know that, so you will ask that to people who live in that street or live in this area. What do you think, guys, we should do? And the two people, one will say yes, we can't. The other will say no, we can't do that. So then you're lost. So if you're lost, you don't do. But yeah, in some occasions, of course, I've been in situation. I've been in other difficult situations. For instance, I've been in Iraq different times, and it's another thing that we sometimes we do not mention enough. But one thing that is very risky for journalists, it's not about enemies of the free press in that case, but it's a traffic accident. There is a high level of journalists who have been killed because when you are reporting in some countries, you are driving very fast. And I've been in a traffic accident extremely serious, where 3 people died, where I was heavily injured, and that was in 2015 as well. So the 2015 was a huge year. That was at the end of 2015. I applied for the fellowship to create forbidden stories on the 5th of December. On the 9th of December, I got that accident, and 3 people died because of that. So all of those, and I have a wife and 2 kids. So of course, a traffic accident can happen here, can happen in Paris. When it's happening 1.5 miles away from ISIS territory, it's different. When it's happening in a country where you're not sure that you will be treated, it's different. So yes, and in other occasions, of course, we try to discuss a lot with our reporters who are on the field and trying to provide advice. This is why one of the challenge here is that we are non-profit. We are hiring people, and we need to guide them in the better way, in the best way we can. And for that, we are very lucky to have very experienced editors who have been in those fields for years and who can train the next generation or work with other seasoned reporters to do that. And of course, the collaborative model is helping in assessing the risk. And when we did the Pegasus project, it was a different kind of threats. We were investigating a very secretive company called the NSO Group, who was selling a spyware to many state actors. And we were having in our hands a list of 50,000 phone numbers of people who have been targeted by the NSO Group, targeted by many states using the spyware sold by this company. So the list we were having were the list of people who were spied on. So all the secret services from all the globe would have dreamed to get that list. And we knew that. And we knew it was extremely dangerous just to hold the list. So of course the list was not a pile of paper. It was something different. But but having such a list into our hands was extremely dangerous. So this is why, again, for that investigation, we were able to set up some protocol of communication with Amnesty International, where the tech part of Amnesty Tech was setting up the communication protocol. We were in the time of the COVID, so we were not able to take too much planes, but we still managed to take some plane to go to the Washington Post to explain, okay, we have a list of phone numbers and we think we should work together, but how are we going to work together if we are surveilled? And how to discuss with victims of surveillance if they are surveilled? How to tell someone that, hey, we think you are surveilled on your phone without endangering the person or yourself. So we need to meet the person in person. And this is what we needed, a large team of reporters all over the globe to go to the victims in many countries and to ask them, could you please give me your phone for 2 hours, and we will run some forensic investigation into it and find some traces of infection. And we did that, and we find a lot of traces of infection. So that was another kind of risk. There is digital risk, we'll say like that, physical risk, legal risk, reputation, in terms of PR and reputation. There is a lot of disinformation as well that is going on when you are publishing some stories that challenge some powerful interests. So we have to deal with all those kind of risks all the time.
When you think about the future of journalism, what do you think that looks like sort of 5-10 years from now?
It's hard to say, and I don't know who is able to answer that. But in my humble point of view, I would say that that first of all, there is. I really believe that there is a place for investigative journalism. If you look at the rating of documentary or the traffic page of content creators who are telling stories, telling investigative, there is an audience and a reach for that. There is a lot of people that like when we are holding the powerful accountable, and we are paid for that. And I think that's still a trend. I'm not observing anything else than that. Investigative journalism works. One challenge for that is making sure that our story will be compelling, the storytelling will be good enough to reach to the people, and that we know where the people are. And it's hard to know where the people are or how to meet them when you don't know how the algorithm is working. So that's one thing. But there are many examples of investigative journalism, investigative piece who became very, who did have a lot of impact because of the storytelling that was very creative. And then aside that, there is a big question now about how the tech companies are stealing the content so literally stealing the content. And then if you want to know something, you go to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will give you in 1 second a mix of the New York Times stories of the day before or the hour before, plus a mix of the Le Monde and so on. And no one is paying for that. And so there is one big economical question about that. Who is ready to pay for information? Last year, there was a survey in France, there were 2 questions. The first question, I was very surprised and happy with the answer. I say, 80% of the French people still believe in journalism. I was happy. I was surprised. I say, oh yeah, that's not something I was expecting. And then the second answer that was 85% of them are not ready to pay a single euro for information. So this is where we are. And I don't know who is ready to go to a supermarket and take the food for free and still believe that that's fine not to pay the people behind the product we are consuming, and we should consider information as a product and as a consumption that is about to help us to understand the world we are living.
Thank you very much. Also for the answers from the audience. I think you're right. There's a huge opportunity and space for journalism, investigative journalism. If we look at what happened in Hungary at the last elections, if you see that, I think Orban was brought down by a very small amount of investigative journalists.
It's true.
A very small group of very small outlets.
It's a good example.
And they did change Hungary for in a huge way. I think it's maybe 20 people, maybe 30 people who worked on that. And one of the major examples, amazing examples actually, is the series of YouTube documentaries made by an extremely small group of journalists, investigative journalists, investigating corruption of Orban and his family. These few YouTube documentaries of several hours, though, were watched by 6.5 million Hungarians just before the election day. So over the few weeks before that, there are not even 10 million Hungarians. So
that's a good example.
And there's huge space for it. The only thing is who's going to pay for it and how it's going to be organized. But there will be a lot of space for it and future. Thank you very much.
Thank you
for coming
all.
and for talking and for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Yuri. Thank you so much.
Yeah.